Hi everybody, welcome back to Sam's Doing Stuff. What am I doing today? We're gonna finish up phase one of my basement renovation. At the end of the last video, we got all the way to putting paint on the walls. That's right, a finished surface. Wow. Now we can put some outlets in that wall. So I'm using an existing circuit, and I've already turned the breaker off to that circuit and retraced the wire to where the first outlet is. So let's start putting in some electrical outlets. Whew, this turned out just beautifully. I'll tell you what, I do not like doing drywall mud, but I'm glad I took the time to do it right, because after the paint's on, it really shows. So anyway, time to switch, put your electrical hat on, and we're gonna do some electrical. So these are just standard 15 amp outlets. There's no reason to use any 20 amps. Nothing on this wall is gonna be a heating element or any type of kitchen appliance or anything like that. So we're just doing standard 15 amp outlets. Let's get started. All right, it's all wired up. I got a light plugged into one of the outlets. Let's flip the breaker and see what happens. Yes. Oh, that's a good feeling. Would you look at that? The closet light even works. Well, here we go. We finally come down to the last step of this whole section. Remember, this goal was to get this storage room done so I can move all of that junk that you saw in the beginning of this video out of the way, which would facilitate having room to finish the rest of the basement. So let's get these doors on. We're going to start with the biggest one here. Now these pre-hung doors, they've got some packaging on them. You're just going to simply cut all this packaging off right away. And we don't need it to put all of this in the framing. Depending on where you get your doors, Home Depot has a little plug here that goes through the door handle. It just kind of keeps things together as you're moving it around. So we're going to get this in place and then finish taking off the rest of this and slide it into the frame. I'm going to set the bottom in first. Now I want you to keep in mind, remember I've got a 2x4 plate on the bottom. Typically you would not have that. All right, blasting this cardboard off. All right, now that we've got it up in the framing, I'm going to take this little piece I told you before, is a little piece of plastic here, take that out and get the whole thing set back in just the way I want it. So here's a little trick. We're getting this thing set into the door frame. I'm going to take, like I say, got this plastic stuff, take it all the way out. That's the little plastic piece. It just goes in the door handle there, keeps everything lined up during shipping and whatnot. Anyway, we're just going to take a scrap piece of 2x4. I'm going to set it down on the floor here, and when I open this door, I can use that 2x4. You might need a couple of pieces. I'm going to use that 2x4 to hold the bottom of the door up. Might even help to take a few shims here and stick them under there. Now that we're pretty close to being in place, I like to just take a clamp, put it up at the top here. We're just lining the front of the top of this up here. It's just kind of holding it in place. I just want a safety so it doesn't go falling over on me. All right, we're inside the room here. We're on the hinge side of the door here, on the inside of the hinge. And this is where you're gonna find out if your framer did their job properly. And my framer was me. So anyway, let's see here. If I put this tight over against the framing, look at that. It's perfectly plumb. So I don't need to shim this side of the frame. I don't. I can attach this side of the doorway directly to the framing and it'll be straight. Now you have shims, of course, and you can use shims if your framer didn't do the framing properly, and make sure that this side of the door is straight, because if the hinge side of the door isn't straight or isn't plumb, nothing's gonna be plumb. It's not gonna work right. So anyway, I know this framing is plumb, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start attaching it to the framing. All right, now just like everything else in this world, you can see this done several different ways. If you didn't have door jamb already installed, these pre-hung doors already have door jamb, you could put your screws in where the door jamb is gonna be, and then you could put the door jamb over the screws and hide the screws. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna remove one hinge at a time, starting with the top. Hold on to those screws, don't lose them. So now this hinge should be able to come away just like that. And the door is still gonna be held by the other two hinges, but now I can get to the meat of this wood right here and be able to put a screw in here. Now I'm gonna go equidistant, probably between these two screws here, and I'm gonna use a countersink tool. And we're gonna countersink that, make sure your front of your door is flush with the drywall. So the front of the door is flush with the drywall frame. We're gonna come back far enough so we're catching the meat of this 2x4. Remember, there's a 1/2 inch drywall there, so you wanna come back far enough. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna countersink a screw right in between these two. I'm using structural screws. Don't use drywall screws. Use the proper screws for each application. You want that countersunk, make sure that is back nice and flush so it's not going to interfere with your hinge. All right, now we can put that hinge back in place. All right, the top of our door frame is hung. Let's go to the bottom. Same procedure for the bottom of the door. We're going to take the bottom hinge out. I'm going to line this up with the drywall in the front there. And now we're going to double check and make sure this is plumb this way, and it's off just ever so slightly. So this bottom side is going to have to come forward just a little more. Same thing, we're going to countersink this one down toward the bottom. Countersink this one the same as the top. All right, we're gonna take this clamp off. It's not really doing much anymore. And this is, we can double check this. Our door should swing just fine. There's definitely gonna be some adjustment on this final edge over here. Everything else is lining up perfectly as far as the hinge side goes. So we're gonna put one more screw in the center and we'll be done with the hinge side. Now, some people might say, you can take this structural screw and you can just replace one of the hinge screws. Just put the structural screw in where the hinge screw would be, and that'll hold it. And yes, that's true, but what if you want to take the door off, like we're going to paint this door. If you want to take the door off, you want to take the hinges off, well guess what? Your structural screws are going to come out with it, and then your door frame's just going to be flopping. So I like to hide the screws behind the hinges. All right, the first side of our door frame is installed. Now obviously you can see This is all floppy, okay? And that's supposed to be that way right now. We haven't put any screws in there. We have nothing structural to hold it, but we know our door is going to close. It's just rubbing a little bit, and we'll make sure we adjust that and get that all the way it needs to be before we put our screws in this side. So we're going to start right here where this latch is going to be, and we want this to be just the right distance away from the door, which should match the top of the frame. That's what you're really looking at. So we're going to take some of our shims, and when you use shims, you want to take the two pointy parts, put them towards each other, and slide them in from each side. That way you end up with the same thickness. You can also adjust your frame kind of in and out. If you slide these in or out, it'll adjust the way the frame sits against the door, the door framing. The door frame sits against the door framing, if that makes sense to you. Anyway, shims go in like this. No lie, that can be a bit of a challenge. We got our middle shims in. Now, you can either cut these shims off, or you can just take them and you can twist the whole thing. All right, got this door framed up perfectly. Nothing rubs, nothing hits. It opens and closes just as it should. Couple of things I had to do, and I'll show you here. I had to put some screws through the door frame here and down here. I recessed them, I countersunk them enough that I'll be able to put putty over them and paint over them, and you'll never see them. I don't like doing that. I would prefer not to do that, but there was really just no way around it. This door frame was a little warped, so I had to straighten it out. But the most important thing is that the door functions properly, and this big crack here that you see, this of course is going to be covered by trim. So you don't have to worry about that, and the trim attaches into the frame of the door as well as to the framing through the drywall, and it holds everything together. So that's really all you need. Screws in where the hinges are, screws in where the latch side is, and you're done. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and get the closet door done, knock that out. I'm gonna put some hardware on these, and I'm gonna give you the after shots of this whole part of the project and see how it turned out. All right, phase one is done. Let's take a little tour, shall we? All right, here's the storage area. Now I want you to remember at the beginning what this looked like. Here we are now. Everything is nice and neatly organized on shelves. Plenty of room. Still more room for everything too. You can walk in here, you can access everything. Yes, my wife likes wreaths. One for every season. Anyway, there's a couple of things here in the middle. These boxes still need to be gone through, but there's tons of room in here. Everything is organized. It was desperately needed. Now, these shelves here you may recognize. I'll show you. Those shelves were all along this wall back here in the utility area. Remember I said this needed to be cleaned up so that you could walk back here freely. Now I've got one set of shelves still here. That's obviously not going to stay there. And these tools obviously aren't going to stay here either. I'm staging all of my tools back in here where they'll be out of the way. And, when this is all cleaned up, this will be completely open and it'll be nothing but a utility area like it should be. Now let's check out the rest of the room. So here's our second closet. This one goes underneath the stairs. Even has a light inside here. Beautiful area to put extra storage. Yep, and of course the door works flawlessly. Bloop. Then, look at that. The wall, we've got seating, we've got the big TV for watching movies. All of our comfy seating here. It's just gonna be a fantastic space. Now I did all of this so that we could enjoy this area, but I'm gonna need to take pretty much everything out to get started on the next phase, which is going to start right here with this wall, continue framing, and we're going to frame the entire basement. that'll be in the next video. So I appreciate you stopping by. You want to see the results, you got to hit subscribe, you got to hit the like, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you next time when I'm doing more stuff.